Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 6.7, talking about using algebra. We've gone through several different ideas, but now you actually have to begin to use this algebra information that you've been learning, especially in word problems. So when you're given a word problem, here are some easy steps to help you get started. Ask yourself first, what is the given? What have they given me in order to be able to solve this problem? And also, what is the unknown? What am I looking to solve for? This is an important step, this next one, that a lot of students skip over. It's when you should define the variable. Say, if I've chosen x as my variable, for example, say x equals the number of steps that I'm going to take, or the time that it takes to do something. Defining that variable helps you realize at the end whether or not you've actually answered the question. Then use those two things to write an equation and solve it. Let's look at a few. The first one says, when 3/4 of a number is added to 12, the result is 18. What is the number? When 3/4 of a number is added to 12, the result is 18. What is the number? Okay, so as I look at what I'm given something with 3/4, and say it's added to 12, and I say that it is 18. And my unknown is this number. That will be our variable. So we'll go ahead and put an n over here. So n represents this number. Now let's write an equation. What I do is I say, okay, let me highlight or draw attention to my important math words. Of is an important math word in this one. Added is an important math word in this one. And is an important math word in this one. So let's look at how those help us write an equation. So 3/4, and then of in math means to multiply. So 3/4 times a number is added to, well, that's easy, plus 12. And then the result is our equals 18. So now I've written an equation using my unknown. All I need to do is to solve it. So I need to say what's happening to my n. N is being multiplied by 3/4, and it's adding 12. So to undo it, I'm going to multiply by 4/3. Remember, we don't divide out a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. And I'm going to subtract 12. My first one should be subtracting 12 from each side, which will give me 3/4 n is equal to 6. Took care of my first step. And then I'm going to multiply by 4/3 for my second step. Remember that over here, everything cancels out. Over here, I want to cross cancel. So I can cross cancel the 6 and the 3, dividing them both by 3. And I end up with n is equal to 2 times 4 is 8 over 1 times 1 is 1. So we can just say 8. Let's try the next one. Clear the board, make it easier to see. Twice a number divided by 15 is 7/5. So twice is important. A number is our variable. Divided by 15 is important. And 7/5 is important. And then if I look for my math words, is divided by, and twice is actually telling me a math operation as well. So it's both an important number and telling me a math operation. So twice means to multiply something by 2. So 2 times a number, which is our variable, divided by 15. And you could have written a division sign and then put 15, either one, is 7/5. Now, if you look at this, can you see why I set it up this way? If you look at it now, it's a proportion. So I know when I'm solving a proportion to cross multiply and solve it. So 2n times 5 would give me 10n. It's going to be equal to 7 times 15 would give me 105. When I go to solve it, I can divide both sides by 10. Remember, anytime you're dividing by 10, you just move the decimal point over. So you can end up with n is equal to, you could write it in fraction or decimal form. I'm going to choose decimal, but you could have just as easily written it in fraction form, 10.5. Let's try the last one on the sheet, on these slides here. A 2x4 is really 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. How many, if laid flat, would be needed to make a deck 8 feet wide? So if you're thinking about it, you're saying, okay, length versus width, and you want to make it 8 feet wide. Be really careful here because you have inches here and feet here. So if it's 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches, let's say 3.5 inches is our bigger one. We want to figure out how many of these 2x4s that are 3.5 inches wide would it take to make a deck that was 8 feet wide. So I'm saying 3.5 times this, how many? We'll say my variable here is my number of, because it asks how many, my number of 2x4s. Okay, so 3.5 times each 2x4, because each one is 3.5 inches wide, is going to be equal to, now I want this 8 feet to also be in inches. So to convert from feet to inches, I'm going to multiply that 8 by 12. Oh, I don't want to put an X there. That'll confuse you. Say 8 times 12, like that. So now I can go ahead and set this up to solve it. I can say 3.5x is going to be equal to 8 times 12, which is 96. When I go through and look at how to solve it, I'm going to divide by this 3.5. Be careful with your division here, because you're going to need to move your decimal over. So when I divide this, I get a little bit more than 27. I got 27.4 when I did this division. But since you can't usually use 0.4 of a board, you would say, if I'm looking at number of boards, number of 2x4s, I can't use 27 and 4/10 of it. So you would actually need to buy one more. So you would say your answer is really 28 2x4s, since you can't buy a piece of one. Okay. All right, let's look at some more here. These are some practice problems from the examples in your book. It says Coach Mahoney ran 6 times as far as he swam and cycled 30 times as far as he swam. If he covered a total of 37 miles in the triathlon, how far did he swim? So what I will tell you guys is, when you're working a problem like this, the hardest thing is to figure out where your variable should go. So my suggestion is, think about what your different statements are comparing to. So it says he ran 6 times as far as he swam. So I'm comparing to swimming. And he cycled 30 times as far as he swam. Again, comparing to swimming. So my N, or my unknown, is going to be the miles swimming. And again, beginning by defining that is really helpful. Okay. So if N is his miles swimming, he ran 6 times as far as he swam. So my running is going to be my swimming times 6. So my swimming is N. So 6 times N will represent my variable for running. And then it says he cycled 30 times as far as he swam. So to find the cycling, I'm going to take the swam miles and multiply it times 30. See how once I defined what each variable meant, the solving became much easier. Then it says he covered a total of 37 miles. So remember, a total is adding everything up. So I could say for this one, n plus 6n plus 30n is going to equal my total miles of 37. As I go to solve it, n plus 6 is 37n. I'm sorry, is 7n plus 30 is going to give me 37n. You may need to remind yourself that that n is really like a 1n. And so to solve it, I need to divide both sides by 37. And I end up with n is going to be equal to 1 mile. That represents, remember, if I go back to where I defined my variable, I can say that represents the number of miles swimming, which is exactly what the question asked. Okay. At the bottom, soccer field has a perimeter of 380 yards, and its length is 4 1/3 yards longer than its width. Find the dimensions. So here I've got a rectangle, and I'm going to say perimeter is equal to 380 yards. And then remember when I say write an equation, this is what I mean. To find the perimeter of the shape, the perimeter of a triangle, I'm sorry, rectangle, I would say perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. That is how you find the perimeter of this shape. That's the equation that you need. Now that I've seen that, I can do so much more with it because I can take the other part of the information that they've given me and begin to write my equation. So I can say, okay, its length is 4 1/3 yards longer than its width. So I'm comparing it to the width. That will be my variable. And my length is 40 1/3 yards longer than that. So I'm going to take whatever my width is and add 40 1/3. Now if I use my perimeter equation, I could say perimeter is equal to 2 times my length. And remember up here we said the length is W plus 40 1/3 plus 2 times my width, which we said was W. So as I go through and do it, I need to distribute out that 2, so that's going to give me 2W plus, when I multiply 2 times 40 1/3, it may be easier to make this into an improper fraction so you don't have to deal with the mixed numbers. This is 121 over 3. When I multiply it by 2, I'm going to end up with 242 over 3, and then plus 2W. I need to combine my like terms here. When I do that, I will have my perimeter is equal to 4W plus this big weird fraction, 242 over 3. Now, I want to plug in the number for my perimeter. So I'm going to delete this perimeter, the P for perimeter, because in order to be able to solve it, I'm going to have to plug in what they gave me for my perimeter as 380 yards. 380 yards will be my perimeter. So to solve it, I need to move the 242 over 3 and get rid of the 4. So minus 242 over 3 minus 242 over 3. So other than being a pain to try to go ahead and subtract, it's not super difficult to do. Okay. Now, this one doesn't even really ask me to solve it in my book. So you could have stopped. Let me show you with my arrow here. You could have stopped right here. Okay. But other than being, like we said, kind of a pain to solve with the fractions, the setting up is something we've been doing for a while. It's nothing new. So if you'll just be sure and take your time as you go through on the word problems, know that they will take you a little bit longer, but you have all of the skills that you need to be able to do them.